You won't believe what happened when this woman, let's call her Karen, started throwing pool parties in my backyard, then had the nerve to claim the whole place was hers. I mean, who does that? Imagine coming home one day, only to find a crowd of strangers splashing around in your pool like it's some public hangout, with Karen acting like she owns the place. At first, I thought maybe it was a huge misunderstanding. But the more she insisted that the backyard was hers, the more I realized this wasn't just a simple mix-up. It quickly turned into a full-on neighborhood drama, and trust me, it got messier than I expected. Now, here's the twist time, actually a property lawyer. So when Karen started pushing her claims, I wasn't about to let this slide. I knew exactly what my rights were and how to handle a situation like this, but I also wanted to see how far she was going to go. Would she back down when faced with facts, or was she ready to escalate things? The tension was building, and it felt like I was living in a real-life legal thriller. This story isn't just about a backyard or a pool party. It's about standing your ground when someone tries to cross the line. What happens when they forget who they're messing with? So, if you've ever dealt with a neighbor who thought they could just take over your space, or if you're curious how property laws really work when things get heated, you're going to want to stick around for this. The confrontation that followed was intense, and it revealed a lot more about Karen's true colors than I ever expected. But I'm not going to spoil the ending just yet. Let's just say the backyard battle was far from over, and Karen seriously underestimated me. Stay tuned for what happens next before all this chaos started. I'd lived in my house for several years without any major issues. The backyard was my little oasis, a place to relax after work, host family barbecues, and just enjoy some peace. I always kept the place well maintained, and neighbors usually respected the boundaries. But Karen, she was different from the start. I remember the first time she knocked on my door, introducing herself like she was some kind of neighborhood queen. Friendly at first, but there was something off. She seemed to have an opinion on everything, and honestly, she was a bit too nosy for my liking. Over the next few months, I noticed little things, her lingering by the fence, talking loudly too, guests about the nice backyard she had, and even dropping hints about wanting to host events. At first, I brushed it off as harmless small talk. But then things started escalating. One weekend, I came home to find my backyard full of people I'd never seen before. Music blaring, and Karen right in the middle of it all, acting like she was the hostess. She had set up decorations, a buffet table, and even brought in a DJ. The nerve. When I asked what was going on, she smiled and said, "Welcome to my pool party." I was stunned. "Your pool party?" I said, "This is my backyard." She just shrugged, acting like it was no big deal. That's when I realized this wasn't just about parties. Karen was trying to take ownership of something that wasn't hers, and she didn't seem to care about facts or boundaries. It felt like she was testing how far she could push, and honestly, it was unsettling. Being a property lawyer, I knew this could get complicated fast. But what I didn't expect was how many secrets this whole situation would start to uncover about Karen, the neighborhood, and even myself. The more I dug, the clearer it became that this was bigger than a backyard dispute. Something else was going on beneath the surface. And I was right in the middle of it. As the pool parties kept happening, the tension between Karen and me only grew. She acted like she owned the place, inviting more and more people over without asking, turning my peaceful backyard into a noisy event space. Neighbors started to notice too. Some were annoyed by the loud music and the crowd, while others seemed curious about the drama unfolding right next door. It was like the whole neighborhood was watching, waiting to see how this would end. But Karen wasn't just throwing parties. She was spreading rumors about the property, telling people that the backyard was hers and that I was just a tenant or a squatter. Hearing this from neighbors was frustrating and confusing. I wondered if she was trying to build some kind of false claim by convincing others. It felt like a game to her, pushing boundaries and seeing how much she could get away with. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep calm and figure out the best way to protect what was rightfully mine. To complicate things further, I started discovering some odd paperwork discrepancies in the neighborhood records. There were mentions of a small strip of land that was unclear whether it belonged to my property or to an adjacent lot. Suddenly, the dispute wasn't just about parties or noise. It might have a legal twist I hadn't expected. Was Karen trying to exploit this confusion to stake a claim? Or was this all just a coincidence that added fuel to the fire? I couldn't tell yet. At the same time, Karen's attitude shifted. She stopped being subtle and began openly challenging me, sometimes blocking the driveway or making snide comments when we crossed paths. It felt personal, and I knew this wasn't just about a backyard anymore. It was about power, control, and maybe something deeper from her side. But I had to be careful. As a property lawyer, I knew the law was on my side, but emotions were running high, and things could spiral if I wasn't careful. Every day, I felt more pressure, both from Karen's escalating behavior and from neighbors who wanted to know what was really going on. The backyard battle had turned into something much bigger, and I wasn't sure how it would end. Things were starting to spiral out of control faster than I expected. Karen's pool parties didn't just stay confined to weekends anymore. She was showing up almost every day with more guests, more noise, and more chaos. The music blasted from my backyard while I was trying to work or just relax, and every time I confronted her, she'd brush me off with a smirk, acting like she had the upper hand. It was like she thrived on the tension, feeding off the fact that she was getting under my skin. One afternoon, I found a group of people setting up for yet another party while I was still at home. I told Karen firmly that she needed to leave immediately, but she just laughed and said, "You'll have to make me." That moment hit me differently. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was a direct challenge. I realized I was dealing with someone who wasn't afraid to push boundaries to see how far she could go. The entire neighborhood had started picking sides, some rooting for me, others whispering about Karen's bold moves and questioning if maybe she did have some claim after all. The rumors were getting louder, and so was the pressure. Then came the day when I spotted a notice pinned to my front door. It was some kind of legal paper, something Karen had filed that complicated things even more. She was claiming adverse possession on part of my backyard, meaning she said she'd been using and maintaining the land long enough to claim ownership. I couldn't believe it. How could she possibly think that was going to work? But with the paperwork in front of me and the neighborhood gossip swirling, I realized I had to act carefully and fast. I started preparing to fight back legally. But deep down, I knew this wouldn't just be a courtroom battle. It was personal. Now, the standoff between Karen and me had reached a breaking point, and I could feel that the next confrontation would decide everything. I was ready. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that Karen had one more move up her sleeve, something I wasn't expecting at all. Just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, Karen dropped a bombshell that threw everything into chaos. Out of nowhere, she claimed to have found an old handwritten agreement from years ago, something about the backyard being shared between our properties. According to her, this agreement gave her rights to use the pool and host events whenever she wanted. I was stunned. I had never seen anything like it before, and honestly, the whole thing looked sketchy. But the fact that she had brought this up in front of neighbors and even shown it around made the situation even more complicated. This twist didn't just confuse people, changed the entire dynamic. Suddenly, I wasn't just defending my property. I was now questioning if there had been some kind of misunderstanding or hidden deal from the past. What if there really was some truth buried in that old document? Or was Karen just trying to manipulate the story to win sympathy and Tosia? And create doubt. I had to dig deeper, but every step I took to verify the claim seemed to pull me into more questions and strange details that didn't add up. Meanwhile, Karen's behavior got bolder. She started leaving notes taped to my door, warning me to think twice before pushing the fight further. The neighborhood felt divided. Some believed her story, others sided with me, but everyone was watching closely, waiting for the next move. Even some longtime neighbors who had been quiet before began sharing rumors about the backyard's history, making it feel like this dispute had been simmering under the surface for years. With this new twist, the stakes had gone way beyond a simple property dispute. It was about trust, history, and who really had the right to claim the space. I was prepared to fight, but the uncertainty was unnerving. As I prepared for the next confrontation, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen's secret might change everything and that the backyard battle was about to reach its most intense moment yet. The day of the big confrontation finally arrived. I had gathered all the evidence, property records, photos, and even a surveyor's report that clearly showed the backyard belonged entirely to me. When I met Karen face to face, she was ready. With that old handwritten agreement, again, waving it like a weapon. The tension was thick. Neighbors had gathered, and it felt like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. I stayed calm and laid out the facts clearly, explaining why her claims didn't hold up legally. It wasn't just about ownership. Ed, while my Ed, has the luxurious texture that glides on smoothly and leaves a rich, long-lasting color. I stayed calm and laid now. Ed, or my lift, adds like a eight. A-E-Y, last, Y, K, why we are, why live, we so why we lives, I'm so we're and I, precise said I when I sighed I'm so it, we're so apt to see it to use lice I could be I we let I stick I could buy it to I see to kill it is just it that bist to be kissed it we did the assists card was about boundaries, respect, and honesty. As I spoke, I noticed a change in her expression, a flicker of doubt, maybe even panic. That's when I dropped the final piece. The surveyor's report showed that the agreement she claimed was not only invalid, but also appeared to be a forgery. I had a copy sent to a handwriting expert, and the results were clear. Karen's secret weapon crumbled right before everyone's eyes. The crowd murmured, and Karen's confident posture faltered. Just when I thought it was over, Karen did something unexpected. She suddenly confessed that she had hoped to scare me off because she was struggling with her own problems. She admitted that the parties were her way of trying to create a sense of control and community when she felt isolated. The backyard battle wasn't just about property, it was about her own fear of being alone. The honesty caught me off guard, and for a moment, the anger between us softened. But then came the real twist. As Karen started to leave, I received a call from a neighbor I barely knew. They told me about a hidden dispute involving a long-forgotten boundary line that wasn't on any public record. It was a subtle reminder that even the clearest fights can have hidden layers, and that sometimes the story isn't as simple as it seems. The backyard was mine, legally, but the neighborhood and life had many more surprises waiting. Just beneath the surface, after that intense confrontation, things slowly started to settle down. Karen stopped showing up with her parties, and the backyard finally felt like my own peaceful space again. But the whole experience left me thinking about how complicated neighbors and property disputes can really be. It wasn't just about land or legal rights, it was about people, emotions, and sometimes struggles we don't see on the surface. Karen's unexpected honesty made me realize that behind every conflict, there's often a deeper story. I took the time to reach out to some neighbors who had been caught in the middle, listening to their perspectives and clearing up the rumors that had spread. It felt good to restore some trust and remind everyone that a neighborhood is more than just lines on a map. It's about community and respect. I also made sure to double-check all my property documents and clarify the boundary lines to avoid any future confusion. Because when it comes to property, being prepared is key. This whole ordeal reminded me why knowing your rights matters, especially when it comes to property ownership. As a property lawyer, I was able to handle the situation with facts and professionalism. But I also learned how important it is to stay patient and listen, even when things get frustrating. Conflicts like this don't have to ruin relationships or communities if everyone is willing to communicate and find solutions in the end. My backyard is truly mine, but the story taught me that sometimes the biggest battles happen outside the courtroom, the way we understand and connect with the people around us. So, if you ever find yourself in a tricky property dispute, remember, stay calm, know your rights, and don't underestimate the power of empathy. Because at the end of the day, a peaceful home is about more than just land, it's about harmony.